my God. This has taken an absolute village to get here. I'm back. And it feels so good to be back. Without further ado, guys. People have word vomit and they will tell you what your ex is up to without you even asking. It's very bizarre. I still get it now. I just have the capacity to be able to love. There is a difference. I hated my heart. I absolutely hated it. And now I'm like, oh my God, I friggin' love that about me, because I've learned that some people don't feel that in their lives. Oh my God. This has taken an absolute village to get here. But I think we've finally been able to actually get onto YouTube. I'm back. And it feels so good to be back. I'm very, very excited about this whole thing and this new area and the way I don't look like I'm just sat on my chair in a Zoom call. I felt like my other videos were giving very much like Zoom, and I have a new chair and I have a new studio, and I guess I just am a bit of a perfectionist, and I have had to take the glass out the front of my pictures because there was a glare because it's so sunny at the moment, and just certain things that I wish were a little bit more polished, but I've had to kind of check myself a little bit because I know not everything is going to be perfect the first time. But I'm actually sat where my desk used to be, so I used to sit and face this wall. My desk is now over there, and this is a cozy little podcast studio. So without further ado, guys, let's get into it. So firstly, welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. Welcome to the new studio. And I know some people are going to be thinking like, studio, she's not in a studio, she's in a house. I don't know how much people know about recording podcast episodes. I don't know whether you know how much it costs and the production that's involved, but a podcast session and in a studio can cost anywhere between £50 to £150 for like 2 hours. Now, I record every single week. I record multiple episodes for my YouTube, my Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and my Patreon. And to be fair, I've not got that sort of money to be renting out a studio week on week to be able to produce these podcast episodes. As much as I'd love to, I actually don't think I would, because the studios are all like pre-done and pre-made, and you kind of have to just roll with it. And I wanted a nice chair, and I wanted nice images in the background, and I wanted it to be girly and pink, and I don't know, I feel like, yes, you get the production, and you don't have to transform your office into a recording studio, which is what I've done, but it saves me so much money. And if there is one thing that, if you followed me for a long time, you know about me, is that I love being self-taught. I love teaching myself new things. I didn't have a podcast episode last week because I was too busy learning how to use this new recording apparatus. So basically, I still record on my phone, and I use a microphone in a different piece of software, and now I've had to learn how to link them both up because I want to be able to record in 4K, and it all gets very technical. And for somebody who is not techie really, I don't think I give myself actually enough justice. I think I am a little bit techie, and I think I do understand things, but honestly, when I say it takes a village, I mean I am production, I am videographer, I am editor, I am sound tech, I am even the brief of the podcast episode, I'm narrator, I am the podcast. And so like I fit under loads of different roles, and sometimes I think I put an immense amount of pressure on myself because I'm like, oh, I need to get this episode out, I need to do this. And I sometimes think that it doesn't have to be perfect, but when you've got a vision in mind of how you want it to look, and I am a bit disappointed because my lighting didn't come. I've had 3 different sets of lighting and I've not been happy with any of them, and it has to be right. And so the lighting might not be the best in this episode, but I feel like I am doing the best with what I have, and which I hope is okay for now until I get the lighting right. But I couldn't string it out another week. I think I stopped video recording on, I think it was the 1st of Feb, and now it's the middle of March. And yes, I've had to do a kind of full office reno in between, and I've had to get the chair right, and I've got, been looking for the right prints, and everything has taken a long time. However, we are back now, and I have my shiny new mic, which is I just love. With the coming up for air on it. I also have my tablet that I'm going to be using for episodes where I've got a lot of advice and I need to remember things. I'm going to be using this, which is branded with coming up for air, which is really exciting. I also have my laptop still over here that I can check the sound, and my notes are still going to be over there. So yeah, my eyes might shift a little bit over there from time to time. But apart from that, we are ready to rock and roll. And like I said, I'm just very excited for everything. So I have grown on Instagram quite a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I have been inundated with a lot of questions and stories, and just a lot of people that have found me and are asking a lot of questions and saying, can you cover this in your podcast, and can you cover that in your podcast? And I've got new subscribers and it's great, and I want to be able to cover all sorts of topics that are going to help a range of different people. However, at the moment, I think it's just the season. So many questions about exes moving on. So many stories and horror stories about people moving on quickly and it doing so much damage, and so many people messaging me like, oh my God, Lou, how did you even cope? And I guess in my eyes, I didn't really cope. And one of the things that I get asked a lot, and one of the things that I struggled with so much, was people comparing my timeline to my ex's. So just because my ex had come out and said, hey, I've got a new girlfriend, this is her, all over social media, which I always say, I love social media, obviously. And I love what you can do from it, you can earn from it, you can learn from it. I love all of that. But sometimes it can be so damaging. And I think the fact that I hadn't got my ex on Instagram, I didn't know that he'd hard launched his girlfriend until I got sent a screenshot, and I was like, oh my God. And it was so difficult for me because I was still living in the house. And I was like, I'm still grieving here. Like, it was really, really hard. And I think one of the most annoying things for me was that everybody compared me then to him. Just because he moved on, it was like, oh, well, she's not over it yet. Coupled with the fact that I sit online and I talk about my breakup so openly. And obviously I'm now, 4 years on, and I'm still talking about my breakup. And I know I don't have to say this to my listeners, but the reason why I'm still talking about my breakup is because it helps people. And I feel like sometimes I have to justify that because I'm like, I'm still, I am still healing in certain ways, but I would say I have definitely processed my breakup. I hate that, I'm definitely over it. I hate that term, but I've definitely processed my breakup. I do not wake up every day thinking about it. I just now talk on the internet about it. And sometimes I feel like because I do that, and I know around the time that, he came out and said he had a new girlfriend, everybody was kind of then looking at me online being like, oh, well, she still seems pretty caught up about her breakup, so she hasn't moved on. And people constantly asking me if I'm in a new relationship, and me having to be like, well, no, because I still live in the house that I shared with my ex, and I'm still working for him, and I'm still trying to process the fact that, like, I'm not getting married this year and I've had to take my engagement ring off. There were so many elements to my breakup that I think is the same as like a lot of people's, like so many elements to a breakup, that when your ex moves on and you're there, you do feel like you're having a big fat light shone on you. You do feel like the pressure is on to move on, because it's like, oh, she's not got a boyfriend, so she must be really not over it. And you know what I also found that like really kind of made me think is that people were almost saying like, it's really embarrassing. And I felt embarrassed because I could feel it in people's tone. It was like, oh, have you not moved on yet? And I was like, no, I haven't. Because I need a new house and I need to get my life in order, and I'm still quite affected by it all. And the worst thing, and always what I say to anybody that messages me, is that like, you do not have to explain yourself to anyone. If you want to heal in a certain way, you can heal in a certain way. That is the whole point to my whole content. It's not just a breakup. And number two, if you have taken 4-5 years to come to terms with your breakup and to process it, then like that's no one else's business. It is no one else's business. I always think as well, like a lot of people said to me, oh, it takes half the time of the relationship that you were in to process it. And I used to think 7 years, because obviously I was in a 14-year relationship. So it took me 7 years to process this. And I don't think people were actually wrong with that, because all these things take time. Being able to buy a new house and process what has gone on took a long time. And I know that people find my content and then they're like, oh my God, 4 years. And I'm like, yeah, 4 years. But everybody is different. But it angered me so much, because I was like, why am I now under pressure and feel like I should just settle down because my ex has? I would have missed out on so many opportunities if I had settled. If I'd got into another relationship, I would have been completely obsessed with finding somebody new. I wouldn't have thrown my absolute soul into content creation. I wouldn't have had half the opportunities that I have had if I had just distracted myself from what I was going through by getting into a new relationship. And now the way that my life's moving and the way that, you know, I'm spending my life in the future, I think, my God, thank God. I just think like, thank God, because it's allowed me to be totally free and be able to have a base in the UK and a base in a different country. And, you know, and that's the way that I see my life going. If I had found somebody, maybe it would have been different. Maybe it wouldn't have been like that. And I also know that I wouldn't have processed my breakup in the way that I should have done. And now I think I'm in a much better headspace to be able to get into a new relationship and to not be in a relationship where I'm having to pull up my new partner on certain things and be like, oh, I just don't want you to do that because my ex did X, Y, and Z. I have been able to heal from a lot of things that I went through, and now I just feel like I won't hold that over the next person's head. Everyone is different. You might not want to be able, you might not want that. However, it has been probably one of the best things that I have ever done. And that is kind of the reason why I wanted to do this episode. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is the reason behind this episode. It's what this episode is called. The pace of your healing isn't a weakness. It's a sign of your strength. It is a sign that you can sit through the darkest times and the hardest moments and think there is light at the end of this tunnel. Because I went through a stage of being like, oh my God, you know, I feel a lot lighter. I have a new house. I've got some new friends. I'm really looking forward to the future. I'm looking forward to everything that I'm building, blah, 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 blah. And then I lost my job, and 2024 and 2025 were really difficult years for me financially. And I was like, oh my God, I'm back at square one again. And I don't actually know how I'm going to survive. I have a monstrous mortgage. What is that all about? I have the most expensive mortgage and I now don't have a job. So how am I going to pay my bills? And obviously I used to work for my ex. So alongside all of that came a little bit more of like the past being reminded and him still kind of controlling the narrative a little bit. And I know I could have gone out and got a new job. I get that. But security wise, it was great because obviously I'd never paid for a house on my own. But the absolute whiplash that I got from my breakup still in 2025, it was still big. It was still there. It was still really affecting me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, how the hell am I going to get through this? And then I remember thinking, I'm going to get through this because I have got through so much shit and I am still standing. And so at the end of this episode, I want you to come out empowered. I want you to feel empowered. I want you to know that the pace that you are healing is not a weakness of yours. It's not because you're weak. It's not because, you can't get over something. It's not because you can't process something. It's because you are building strength. It is a complete testimonial to your strength. So I want you to feel empowered. I want you to be reassured that you aren't behind. And I want you to know that you are healing properly. So without further ado, guys, let's get into it. So I talk about feeling like you're behind quite a lot. It's a feeling that is quite normal to go through. I think everyone kind of goes through it when you go through a breakup because everyone around you is doing the things that you thought you would be doing. It is incredibly normal to feel like you are behind. But I'm here to remind you that you are not behind. Don't want to delve into it because I say it all the time, but you are not behind. You should not be asking yourself, why am I not over it yet? Start asking yourself, what are you learning through this process? What are you going to learn? And let me tell you, if you're at the start of your breakup, you are going to learn a hefty amount about yourself. And you are going to go through times where you think, oh my God, I really don't like that about myself. And you're going to go through times where you're going to think, oh my God, I didn't actually think I was going to get through that. And here you are still standing. And I kind of don't make jokes, but I always say like, I genuinely felt in my breakup that I was suffocating 24/7. I felt like I couldn't, well, hence the reason why this podcast is called Coming Up for Air, but I felt like I could never kind of fully get my breath back before something else happened. And then my friend would get engaged. And again, I would be reminded that, remember when you were engaged, remember when it all went wrong, remember now that you're single. And everything was really hard for me to process. And that's because I sat there thinking, why am I not over it yet? Why can't I just click my fingers and get into a new relationship like he did? Why can't I do that? Why am I taking this so personally, so heavily? And not thinking, right, what is this actually going to teach me? Because I hadn't been single since I was 14. I'd never made a decision by myself, really. I'd never not had somebody standing by my side saying, that's a good idea, that's not a good idea, or whatever. I always had support, and my ex was very supportive in everything that I did. I always had that support. And I always try and say, not everything about him was bad. Our relationship was great. And he was very supportive with me. But then when he went, it was like, well, what now? Do I buy that house? Do I take that job? Do I get that car? Like, it was like, oh my God, I'm all of a sudden, I can't explain it, but I was all of a sudden a 14-year-old girl living a 30-year-old's life. It was so weird. It was like I'd gone back because people are like, oh, you survived without them. I was 14. And so like even like going on dates and stuff, I was like, how do you talk to different men? Like, how do you go on dates and all the rest of it? Anyway, I kept asking myself, why am I not over it? And I think it was doing more damage. And it took me a long time to learn, and it would probably take you guys a long time to learn, that healing wasn't a race. Healing isn't a race, and everybody heals in their own time. And your ex moving on does not define your healing at all. Just because they've moved on doesn't mean that you will then have to be over it. And that is something that I needed to hear and probably get tattooed on me because my ex moved on so quickly. I needed to know that the fact that he moved on, it didn't mean that then when people looked at me and I still got upset about stuff, that was totally okay. I was so hard on myself when he moved on and came out and said he had a girlfriend. I was super tough on myself. And I was like questioning whether I mattered, questioning like, did our relationship mean anything? And I was questioning myself a lot, like, and us a lot. Like, did I matter? Did I mean anything? Was I the problem? Does this mean that like I'm never going to get over it? And obviously I was engaged. So it's like, well, what was the meaning of that? And when I say I've had to reprogram my brain, people kind of look at me like, what? And what I mean by that is I had a ring on my finger. I was going to get married. And then I was left in a state of like, oh, that doesn't mean anything because I've got a new girlfriend. And I've had to reprogram my brain to know and to anchor into the fact that I was not the problem. And my thoughts on love and the fact that I took it so hard and the fact that I really, really, really struggled during my entire breakup was not my issue. It was actually a real true reflection on the person that I was. I wasn't running away and I was really anchoring into my feelings. And that is just something that not a lot of people want to do after a breakup. So they move on. I was choosing to face it. And I was choosing to face it, but I was also choosing to face it in a way that I obviously shared it online. So it was heightened. Everything was heightened that I was going through. Every single time that I posted a reel, I would walk into the pub at the weekend and it was like, oh, it's the gal that cries on the internet again. I chose to face it. I chose to go through the motions of this breakup, and not a lot of people want to do that because it makes them feel uncomfortable. And I'd realized that I was doing a lot of the healing that people choose to avoid. And I remember going into my therapy sessions a lot saying like, oh, God's sake, I've been sent another photograph of them together, or oh, for God's sake, like I don't understand why like I'm not ready to get on dating apps, or like I'm not interested in anybody else. And my therapist was like listen, just listen to yourself for 5 minutes. It was like, why am I seeing this? Why am I doing that? Why am I doing this? Because they're doing that. And she was like, you are comparing your timeline to their timeline. And a good mindset shift that she put me onto when I found myself kind of like spiraling and looking at photos and being like, what the hell? You have to learn to release their timeline. What they're doing does not impact yours whatsoever. And I talk about this a lot. I talk about the fact that when you are in a relationship and that relationship ends, it's very, very difficult to view yourself, especially after a long time, as a person in their own rights who's living their own life. Because I always existed as me and one other. There was always somebody else to me. And when we split up, I found it very hard to sever the fact that like our lives didn't collide anymore. And so when my therapist said that to me, release their timeline, actually physically think about you releasing everything they're doing away from you and bringing yourself back to your own timeline, and to figure out how you're going to make it through the end of the week, which is something that was in one stage of my breakup. I was like, oh my God, how the hell am I going to make it to the end of today without crying? Actually anchor into your own timeline and know what you're doing now is okay. And if that means that you are still crying about seeing photographs of them and their new partner together, that's okay. That's the timeline that you're on. The fact that they're going on holiday, or he's moved her into your house, or she's moved him into your house, or anything like that, you have to try and release yourself from their timeline, because you are not a couple anymore. What they're doing within their life doesn't have to then mirror within yours. What they're doing is severely impacting you emotionally. Of course, you cannot get away from that. It is going to hurt, and it is going to hurt a lot. But the rate that they have moved on is not a reflection of your relationship, how you were as a person, how you were as a girlfriend, how you were as a boyfriend, what your relationship meant. It is a complete reflection on how they are processing their breakup. And they've decided to do it that way, and you've decided to do it this way. And I think one of the most important things to realize, and one of the things that I write out a lot in a lot of my messages, is that you are processing, you are not avoiding. And I think I've gone through chapters of my breakup where I've had to kind of pull the anchor in and be like, am I avoiding this situation, or am I avoiding that? Am I running away from that? And I've had it more recently where I've wanted to move abroad. And I think I was talking to my friend the other day and I was saying to him, like, I am really struggling with the processing the fact that like I have felt this draw to move. And he was laughing and he was like, you don't need to overanalyze everything. And I was like, no, but I remember also messaging my best friend who lived in Australia at the time. I remember being like, I just want to pack my bags and move over to you. That during the time that I was going through was me avoiding and running away. And I think it has taken me a lot of time, like I always say, to rewire my brain to realize that this is actually how my future is actually planning to go now. This is me in a new chapter of my life where, yes, that pull to move abroad is there. And I say move abroad, you know what I mean. Like, I want to have a base in the UK and a base abroad. But that pull coming to me now, I have had to sit down and think like, am I running away from something? Because that is how trauma works. It springs up on you and you think, oh, am I doing that? 3 years ago, probably yes. I might have been running away from something. But now I've done the work. I've done the healing. I'm in a different frame of mind completely. I'm not running away. I just quite would fancy, moving abroad. And it's funny because of what things like that do to you. You do end up thinking, oh my God, am I avoiding something here? And I have pulled apart a lot of things and thought, am I just distracting myself? Am I avoiding? Or is this actually the universe saying like, just pack your bags and go, would you? For God's sake, stop overanalyzing everything. And I think when you reframe what it actually means to move on, that's when you anchor yourself back down and you think, hold on a second, no. Because on the outside, it does sometimes look like you're running away. And I have had comments when I've been talking about moving abroad and it's like, oh God, she hasn't got a boyfriend. She still talks about a relationship online and now she's moving. I know what it looks like, and I don't think that helps the kind of anxiety that I've got. Like, am I actually running away from something? I'm not. But going back to what I'm saying about you processing things and not avoiding things, when you actually process and think about reframing what moving on actually looks like, because from the outside, you do look like you're stuck. And I will always say I was fighting for my life trying to explain to people just because I haven't got a new relationship doesn't mean I haven't moved on, which was then heightened when my ex actually said it to my face. We just want you to be happy because I had not got a boyfriend. That kind of like sent like shockwaves through my body where I was like, oh my God. Why does everybody think that your happiness is defined on whether you are in a relationship? It is so irritating. But like I said, on the outside, it looks like you are stuck and it looks like you are not making any progress whatsoever. But what happens if you're not actually stuck? What happens if you're actually just not running away from things and that you are facing them head on and that you are actually processing your breakup? And within doing that and processing your breakup, you are allowing the grief to move through you. You are not numbing yourself with rebounds, other relationships, finding validation from somebody else, avoiding topics of conversation, pretending like, oh, well, it just didn't work out. You're actually working out why you've reacted in a certain way. And I think when you are the one that's left and you're not the one that's made the decision, it is also then harder again to kind of find closure because you're not the one that made the decision. And I will always say and stand firm on the fact that I would have never left that relationship. I will say that like confidently, it wasn't my decision and I wanted to stay in that relationship. Of course I did. And now in reflection, do I understand why it ended? Yes, I do. But I chased my own closure and I chose to work out what had actually happened, why it had happened. And because I got I'd say 10% of the answers to the questions that I was asking, that 90% I spent time in therapy working through why other people's minds work the way they do and how that has impacted me. I did all of that work. I did all the processing. In that time, I learned to say to people, I'm processing a huge breakup. I am processing a huge life adjustment. I'm not running away. I'm not avoiding. And I know when I've spent time with other people, I can imagine how easy it would have been if I jumped into a new relationship to block out everything that I went through with my ex. I am so grateful that I didn't jump into a new relationship. I am so grateful, because I would have just been hit with what could only have felt like a wrecking ball probably a couple of years later with, oh my God, I never did process everything that I went through with my ex and the feelings that I had and everything that I went through. And that is what I wanted to avoid. And that is why I talk so openly about my breakup, because I wish there was somebody in my ear saying, you are doing the most, you are doing the best work, you are doing the most, you are healing in the most healthiest way, and this is going to pay off. And that is why I sit here and continue to talk about it, because I am now able to say it has massively paid off. And I remember my therapist picking up on certain things when I was avoiding topics of conversation or when I was avoiding talking about something. And she would say to me, avoidance feels faster. Of course you want to avoid certain situations. Of course you don't want to talk about them. Of course you want to distract yourself. It feels faster. It feels like, oh, well, I've got over that now, so that's okay. Processing feels freaking heavy. It feels heavy, it feels long, it feels hard, but only one of those things leads to real healing. And it isn't just distract. You can distract yourself and you can avoid things for years and years. I've had the most interesting conversation with a woman recently on my Patreon who said that she was with another man quite soon after he came out of his, I think it was like a 10-year marriage, a 10-year relationship, 2-year marriage. She was then the next woman, and she said at 45 she's going through a huge breakup because he hadn't processed what had gone on in his last relationship. And she was like, I've found your content so refreshing, and I just wish that he would have done that work, because I then wouldn't have been in this position. And I think it is so interesting, one, when I hear it from other people, like, you know, boot on the other foot kind of thing, and two, when people say to me, I wish that they had done the healing, because I don't care what people say. Things like this do catch up with you. Not processing things properly does catch up with you. And I've had things happen within the last 4 years where I've avoided it. And now I'm talking about it in therapy and I'm like, oh my God, I hadn't realised how much I avoided talking about that topic. And now I'm talking about it, I've realised that actually I do need to process that a bit more. I do need to work through that. And I talk more openly about what I'm going through at therapy at the moment on my Patreon. But it's really, really interesting. And that message from that woman made me not smile, obviously, but it made me think like, oh my God, healing from a breakup properly is so important. Whether you are the person that has been left or you are the person that's doing the leaving, you have to process what you are going through and why you have done what you have done and why you reacted in that way. Good mindset shift here is I am not stuck. I am processing what other people avoid. And I like to give you little mindset tips because my therapist was very good at being able to like give me things that I could anchor down into and kind of ground me and bring me back. When you feel like you're stuck, you're not stuck. You are just processing things that people avoid. And that, again, going right back to the start of this podcast episode, that is strength. That is a true representation of the strength that you have and the strength that you are building and that you are going to bring into your future relationships and just your future in general. Another thing that I wanted to talk about whilst you were going through your breakup and you are processing certain things is the fact that you are actually building so much emotional awareness. You will not realize this until probably a couple of years later, because I have started to realise how much emotional awareness I have within myself and somebody else. And I've always kind of been the friend that people go to for advice. And I think that was always because I was the one that was in the relationship. So people used to come to me for relationship advice. People now come to me for breakup advice. But I'm also very willing to give relationship advice. I think, the fact that I'd been in a relationship for half my life, I can still give good relationship advice. But obviously now it's changed to breakup advice. And I'm totally okay with that. This is what people completely overlook massively when they're going through a breakup. You are building so much emotional intelligence. You are going to be able to handle any emotional situation at the end of this breakup. Trust me. You are going to be able to work out what triggered you in that relationship. So things that I never brought up, my God, have come up in therapy. And my therapist has been like, what the hell? Sometimes I sit there in silence. Sometimes she sits there in silence. Well, less often now, but I remember when I first kind of got used to her, because it takes a long time to get used to a therapist. It takes a long time to trust that it's actually going to work and that you going through this emotional, pit of hell once a week is actually going to be worth it. But the more I opened up and the more I spoke to her and the more I got more sort of used to her saying, not bad things about my ex, but kind of saying, okay, well, that's not normal. And if you'd come to me as a couple, I would have raised that issue straight away. And there were things that I did and things that he did that I have learned through going to therapy, that things that I should have probably A, not tolerated, or B, might have triggered something because of the way that I react emotionally to situations. When I tell you I have dissected so much of my old relationship and my past relationship, you wouldn't believe. It felt like at one point I was in couples therapy by myself, because we have had to go back and look at how I handled situations with my ex and why that is related to why I handled situations within my breakup and how I've handled situations within my breakup. But you will notice and you will work out what you tolerated when you were in a relationship, what you triggered you within the relationship, and also what you truly, truly need to move forward and how you're going to move forward. And all these things you will learn as you are going through your breakup. This sort of awareness will change your future entirely. And I can say that now because it has literally made such a difference to my future. Because when you see something so clearly, you will never, ever, 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 ever be able to unsee it ever again. And when someone acts in a certain way and you've been through it and, you've gone to therapy or you've noticed a certain way that someone acts and you've noticed how that makes you feel, you will never tolerate that ever again. I pull people up on their behavior all the time and I am not scared to do that. I pull people up on how they say stuff to people. I pull people up on when they're not saying enough. And when my friends come to me for advice, I'm like, just say that. Just talk to them or say this or say that. Oh, you're not tolerating that. And this is what I mean. You create this strength and knowing that you'll never put up with the same behavior ever again, which means you will not repeat the same patterns. And I talk a lot more about this on my Patreon, but I will die on this hill. There is no way I'm ever going to date somebody that has just come out of a long-term relationship. It's a big fat no from me. One, knowing what I went through, I would just never do it. And two, knowing that you physically cannot process a breakup in a short amount of time. And again, going back to what I said, repeating patterns, people will repeat the same patterns if they do not take the time to heal from whatever they have been through. And there is no way, like I said at the start of this episode, that I wanted to get into a new relationship and say, oh, you can't do that, or you can do that, or I feel like this because of my ex. There are going to be certain deeper things that I talk to new partners about that are to do with PTSD and my abandonment trauma and things like that I know are going to have to be spoken about. But I didn't want to be that person that was I don't want to ever get engaged ever again because my ex broke off the engagement. I didn't want my new partner to suffer at the hands of my ex because of what my ex did, because of the choices my ex made. And I just don't think you can fully process that unless you spend time by yourself. And people look at me gone out sometimes because they're like, everyone heals differently. I know, But also, I do think that spending time by yourself is so, so, so important. And being able to work through certain actions. Why did I act like that? Why did I process that like that? How come I've reacted like that? Because half the things that I read in my inbox and the reason why people leave are very similar to the reason why my ex left. You get the classic, it's not you, it's me. And then I get messages from the same people 4 or 5 months down the line, and they're like, Lou, I was listening to your podcast episode thinking, how on earth has she even gone through that? And I'm now going through the same thing because my ex has got a new girlfriend or my ex has got a new boyfriend. And I keep in touch with these people because they update me on like their stages of their healing, which is great and I love it. But I sometimes sit back and think, God, all these people are just running and they're just avoiding. And that is not what I want you to be able to sit and know, that you can heal and that you will heal in such a way that will benefit you and your future relationships for the rest of your life. And sometimes I think it was really hard for me. I'd moved into my new house, and I tell a story where I remember, I think I was doing the fuel cards for something. I don't know. I'd seen my ex be somewhere and kind of put two and two together. And then I remember being told or shown a photograph of him being away with his new girlfriend. And I'd just moved into my new house. So it was a good year and a bit after he left me, and I sat at the top of my stairs. I'm pointing next to the top of my stairs there. I sat at the top of my stairs and had the biggest meltdown. And I was asking myself, why am I still affected? I'm sat in my new house. I have done this all by myself. I'm free from everything that other house made me feel. I can heal in an environment that I wasn't destroyed in. Why on earth am I sat at the top of my stairs in my new house, painting my bedroom, crying my eyes out because I've heard and seen something about my ex and his new girlfriend? And you sit there and you think, why am I still affected? And instead of asking yourself why you're still affected, start asking yourself, what is this moment showing me? Because you will grow through those situations, and those situations will get less and less and less and less. And I have started talking about on my Patreon the future, and I did an episode on like when your ex gets into a rebound relationship but then it sticks and they don't seem to come out of that relationship. And there are going to be times in my future where somebody tells me information about my ex-boyfriend and his girlfriend, and it's going to feel like getting married, having a baby. I think that's normal. And my sisters, they've said it to me when they've had ex-partners and they've got into relationships, and you know, you're not bothered, but it does kind of make you feel like, oh, and it reminds you that once upon a time you'd planned that with that person. So of course it's going to make you feel a bit like, I don't know whether it would be like a twinge in my chest or anything, but I do not get affected by anything that my ex does these days. One, because I don't hear about it. And two, because I've gone through those situations, allowed myself to feel, allowed myself to cry, not beat myself up about it, and thought, what is this showing about myself? Okay, this is showing me that maybe I needed to cry. Maybe this is me just being a bit overwhelmed with everything that's happened. I've had to move into a new house. I've had to do this all by myself. And then I got told, obviously, that they were away. And it was kind of like I was still struggling and he didn't have a care in the world. And instead of thinking like, why is this still affecting me? I was thinking the next time this happens, I would have gone through this situation and I would have grown through it. And that is a testimonial to my strength, nothing else. And it was right. Every single time I got fed information, because like I always say, people have word vomit and they will tell you what your ex is up to without you even asking. It's very bizarre. I still get it now. I still get told things now about where my ex is, what he's doing. It's so weird because people just have this weird word vomit that they just kind of just go, "Well, have you seen what your ex is doing?" And you're like, no, I haven't. And it's mutual friends, obviously, which I kind of see sometimes, kind of don't. But it's so funny. It's such a weird thing. I don't know why people do it. But yeah, I think it's a testimonial to your strength, because when you then hear more things, you're like, okay, I've heard that, or I've seen that photo now. Seeing another photo will hurt less, and it will hurt less. And it will be you growing through these situations and being able to say, I remember the time when I sat on my stairs and I cried my eyes out and I had the biggest meltdown. I remember not being able to breathe and thinking, oh my God. The year after I saw them at the races together, it didn't even affect me. You know, so like you do grow through these situations, and as cliche as it sounds, you do grow through what you go through. That is something that I do strongly believe in. The final thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that you are proving to yourself that you have the capacity to love so deeply. And I have been sitting in this sort of limbo period where I'm like, do I show my soft girl side, or do I continue to be a strong, independent woman who doesn't need a man? And it's funny because you do forget what you are like in a relationship. You forget how loving you are. You forget how much you want to see someone. You forget how much, you know, you want to text and talk and all the rest of it. And a breakup takes that completely away from you because you become this shadow and shell of yourself, and you forget what you actually felt like within a relationship. And it's really, really hard because I am a complete lover girl. I love love. I love being in love. I love feeling love. I love showing love. And I resented that for such a long time. And I remember my ex doing stuff or like saying certain things to me and me thinking like, God, I'm like completely head over heels for this guy, and he doesn't love me that much because he can't communicate that to me. And I didn't realize at the time that that's actually something that now I need. I like to know that someone loves me as much as I love them. And I know people show their love in different ways, but it kind of stayed with me a little bit because I was like, oh, the reason why I took the breakup so badly is obviously because I was more in love with him than he was in love with me. No, I just have the capacity to be able to love. There is a difference. I hated my heart. I absolutely hated it. I hated the fact that I felt things so deeply. I hated the fact that I could sit and say to people, I absolutely adored him. I loved him to his core. I hated that about me. And I became this person that was like trying to be like an ice queen and ice cold and not have feelings. And it was horrible because that's not how I was brought up. My parents celebrated 48 years of marriage on Wednesday this week. 48 years my parents have been married. And I have just been brought up surrounded by love my entire life. I have the most incredible family. I have the most loving friends. And I found myself sitting in situations saying like, oh my God, I hate how much I love. Oh my God, I hate being hopeless romantic. Oh my God, I hate how much I loved my ex. And now I'm like, oh my God, I friggin' love that about me because I've learned that some people don't feel that in their lives. And I think like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for those people that don't feel the amount of love and passion that I feel. By going through this breakup and feeling all your emotions and being upset and not wanting to move on and not wanting to jump into someone else's bed, you are proving to yourself you have capacity to love. And when I look at my parents and I think what they've been through, you do not get to choose your family. I am blessed with the best family, but you do not get to choose your family. The most important person that you then choose in life is the person that you spend the rest of your life with, because they are the ones that are going to prop you up. They are the ones that you're going to go through life with, go through different situations with, sad situations, happy situations. I now understand why I always looked at my ex and thought, oh my God, I love you more than you love me, because he didn't have the capacity to love deeply. And like I said, when I went through my breakup, I hated that about me. I wanted to be ice cold, but what I learned was that my heartbreak and your heartbreak isn't evidence that there is something wrong with you. It's evidence that you have the ability to love and the capacity to love. And at the moment, it might feel like, oh my God, I never want to feel in love again. But trust me when I tell you, it is something to be so proud of, and something that someone will look at you one day and say, oh my God, I love the bones of you. And you're going to be able to say, I love the bones of you back. And love isn't going to feel scary. And I feel sorry for people that find falling in love difficult. And I feel sorry for people that find love scary, because it's just the best thing. Being in love is just the most special thing ever. And everyone with big hearts should be so, so proud. I hope that episode helped. I hope you liked the comeback episode of the studio. I hope you liked the studio. You'll be seeing this a lot more on my YouTube, a lot more on my Instagram. If you want more episodes, as per, guys, you can go over to my Patreon. There are hundreds of episodes over there. I talk about really personal things over there. It is £5 a month. It gets you 2 extra episodes a week. Video episodes are going on over there as well. That is just something that I need to kind of decide how I'm doing this, because I've noticed that my phone storage isn't that big, so I need to kind of navigate that. I've had a few technical issues throughout this episode. Hopefully they're not too obvious, but we are learning. I did record a whole chunk without actually pressing record on my audio software, so that was great. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed me coming back and having video episodes. I have so many episode requests that I need to get through, but if you want me to cover anything, please just message me and let me know. If you aren't joining me over on Patreon, then I will see you in the next hour episode next week. Look after yourself, guys. Bye.